All right, my friends, welcome to episode 287 of Prof and Dev Play Games. My name is Larry, the professor at Prof Plays Games on Twitter. Over there is Anthony, the dev at Summer Speak. How was your weekend?
Weekend's been okay. Got outside today. Didn't get outside yesterday. So, take a day of complete chilling at home and then a day of a little activity. But seems to be the way of things for the last long while.
Yeah, this last year that's been the same week over and over again.
Yeah, I was telling my wife as we were going out today. A year ago, we were in the middle of trying to figure out how to get flour.
Yes.
And where to get toilet paper.
Correct.
Not that we were running out of toilet paper, just going like, if we start getting low on toilet paper, we should probably have some backup of like what we should do.
Yeah, a year ago I was spamming Instacart and trying to buy flour, and neither were working.
Yep. We ordered from some small flour places, actually, which ended up being cool because we found out of small independent flour producers in the U.S. and got a variety of different flours.
Nice.
And
that's a good consequence.
Still order from one of them every once in a while if we want kind of like specialty flours.
Right.
So
that's great.
Yeah.
Yeah, I made quite a bit of bread. Still do, actually.
You and a good portion of the United States.
Exactly. All right, Anthony. So I'm a professor. I teach academic writing, and we're going through a unit on gender equity. So hypothetically, if my students were to write an essay where they're looking at some of the statistics and the data, and they're seeing that there's a pay gap between men and women, and then they start to dig into the statistics a little more, and they see that the top 10, according to the U.S. Labor Bureau, top 10 highest paying jobs in the U.S. are dominated by men, top 10 lowest paying jobs are dominated by women, and that feeds into that gender gap. And based on all that data, they say there's absolute parity in terms of pay between men and women in the United States. It's totally equal. I would say to them, you've got the examples right, the facts are right, but your thesis doesn't really follow the facts. And we talk about that, and we develop a new thesis. I say that as an introduction to this week. We are talking about Jason Schreier's article in Bloomberg, where his headline is Sony's obsession with blockbusters is stirring unrest within PlayStation Empire. And I think you and I have a similar take where a lot of the details and the facts of the article make sense, but the thesis perhaps is gone a little bit awry, or perhaps there's a bit of editorializing that don't really follow the facts in our view. You reread this article right before we came online.
Yeah.
What stands out to you? Where do you want to take this conversation?
There's a lot. He goes through a lot of stuff there. I guess the through line from his article is this like, hey, there was this San Diego-based internal Sony group, Visual Arts Services Group, and they do a lot. They're basically like, I don't know, I would use the term like the Gopher Studio for Sony.
Yeah, right.
They jump around. They help finish games. That's what they do. And then there's this guy, Michael Mumbauer, who's been at Sony for a very long time and who's primarily worked on animation side for the games, like cutscenes, that's where the Visual Arts Service Group seems to have been focused. And the through line is he wanted to change that group and spin it up as a new studio in Sony, weirdly doing a remake to The Last of Us, for the PS5. I guess we already have a remaster of The Last of Us on the PS4, which I guess came out shortly after the PS4 originally came out, right?
Yeah, it was.
Last of Us was 2013.
Right, it straddled the two
remaster
consoles.
Was like 2014, 2015?
I think it was 14. I think it was 13 PS3, 14 PS4.
Whatever they want to make a remake, I don't know. But sure, like, this was his idea, and he wanted to start building this inside Sony do it, of course. And the article just goes through kind of the trials and tribulations that he had in doing this whole thing, and then talking about other things Sony has been doing over that time, which I think is where he's pointing back to this thesis of them obsessing over blockbusters. And so, I guess with that is, he has facts. Where I go with the facts, I think he has facts right. Yes, this guy tried to make the studio, really spin up a studio to do a Last of Us remake for PS5. And then somewhere along the line, Sony was like, no, we'd much rather just have Naughty Dog do this.
Right.
We're not interested in a separate group making this. We want the studio who made the game to make any kind of remake for it. And where the article seems to take this as like Sony wants to crush new things inside starting up, I take it as, well, of course they want to put it with the people who made the game, who have the most investment in that franchise.
Yeah, and I think that's true. And I also feel like the piece about Days Gone, where they basically crushed the sequel to Days Gone back in 2019, and that sort of proves that they want to go with blockbusters only because Days Gone wasn't a blockbuster. Like, it sometimes comes down, in my view, as a business, like managing resources. And if that was, that was like lukewarm reception, and perhaps it sold just enough to make its money back or maybe a bit more. But they look at that and say, we can use these resources in a different way. And then if which is true, as later confirmed obliquely by people who left the studio, where Bend, when they tried to make that pitch, they were then told no, and some of the leads left. Like, okay, if the leads of this group are all gone, then we will, use what's left for other projects that we're working on right now. Because, especially with the Last of Us remake, which in my head, I'm thinking, who the fuck needs a remake of a game that's already been remade? Well, remastered, I guess. But then I think, as the article mentions, the HBO series Last of Us is going to come out at some point. So to have this really fresh Last of Us 2 package remake for people who get in, through the HBO show, which would have been, I think, killer for CD Projekt Red if they had The Witcher 3, PS5 version or the shiniest version ready to go when Netflix show hit. They would have sold a shit ton of those things at $60 a pop, So it just all seems like business.
It does, to me, all seem like business in a lot of ways. Like the Days Gone thing. So they didn't do a sequel to Days Gone, but they are doing a sequel to Horizon.
Right.
So it's not... And Guerrilla hadn't made incredibly profitable blockbuster games until Horizon. Horizon was a breakout for them,
right,
as a company. And the problem is I don't think Days Gone was a breakout for Bend Studio. Like, it was the best that they had ever done. But you said it had pretty lukewarm reception. I think reception to it has improved over time as it's come out, and of course got some patches and fixed some of the stuff that was wrong with it at launch. But I don't hear people out there going like, oh yeah, I really, really like Days Gone. I want to see a sequel to it. It's not something you really caught on in that like mind share of the populace.
No, it hasn't. But
we spend money, which is fine. A lot of games come out and they don't do that. But I don't see them like, yeah, I pretty much had no thought that there would be a Days Gone 2 coming out. It didn't cross that threshold.
It didn't. What I hear about that game, specifically about sequels, is this game really, it was close. It didn't hit. Could have been, if you trim the fat 20%, and done something different, it could have been pretty good. So I'd love to see what they do with the sequel, but not like, I love this one, I want to say sequel, but they're getting closer to something good. And I don't think Sony looks at that and says, yeah, let's spend more money on that.
It's hard. I'm sure it's a hard thing when they're looking at budgets for all their studios, going like, where do we want to put our money?
Yep.
Clearly, they're like, we want to put it at Guerrilla because we want Horizon 2. At the time when they did that, because that, and this should say, it all comes back to selling consoles in some way. and Horizon sold a lot of consoles.
Yep.
Overall. So whenever I see all the stuff in this article listed out, I'm like, I'm seeing basically business decisions that are focused on, hey, this was what was successful for us in the last gen. Let's keep doing that. And maybe even doubling down a bit on some of those things of being like the article mentions that they restructured Japan studio, and a lot of the people that make Gravity Rush left. And
right.
Gravity Rush 2.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
Which makes, but their whole thing was like, we want to make games that are appeal to a worldwide audience, not just Japan anymore. And the Gravity Rush games never sold well outside of Japan.
Right.
Like, it's unfortunate, but Sony is choosing to be a company that looks as, we are not just a Japanese company making games for Japan, we are making games for the world now.
And I still feel like Sony benefits, because if you think about the budget they poured into Studio Japan versus what they got, if those teams leave and create games, chances are they're probably going to publish them on PlayStation, and Sony will get a cut of that, which would probably net out to be similar. Yeah. So for Sony, at least. So I don't know if that's a loss for them, you know?
Yeah, there's a point in this article where there was something, I'm going to paraphrase, that was something that like, that, and I actually hate Schreier for using the term, because it actually says like, emphasizing big hits and not doing any small things is bad for game diversity for gamers. And I hate using gamers just anytime, actually. I hate that CD Projekt Red opens their thing of like, like talking to gamers. I'm actually starting to get really frustrated with that. We can get into that in a little bit later. There's some streams I was watching, and it was actually like, I don't know, me as a developer now, where I'm at, I'm just like, I do not want to hear this stuff, actually. Mm-hmm. But there's something I'm like, these people, some might leave the game industry, some might just make their games that they want to make.
Right.
Like, Sony not making a game does not prevent there to be a broad range of gaming experiences in the market and on PlayStation.
Well, I think especially now with the preponderance of indie games that cover a huge range, like there's more diversity, I think, than there ever has been.
There is. So, I don't agree with that. I'm like, I would expect that the big major companies, and maybe that's where people are like, don't want to see Sony go that way,
mm-hmm.
but the big publishers tend to not take risks on these small, weird games. They just don't.
I think especially
they want to make the big games that sell consoles.
I mean, I think that's exactly right. And I also feel like the culture of, at least the Japanese side of Sony, but maybe just business culture in general, is the same thing as the business culture of Nintendo, where it's very conservative. They don't want to take huge risks. They want to, if you can go back, if they can remaster The Last of Us, time it with the HBO show, and make, sell 15 million copies of that's a great business decision, even if as a gamer, I would want to see something new from Naughty Dog or something like that, And that doesn't mean
I don't think this prevents Naughty Dog from doing something.
Correct. New. They have a big enough team to do multiple things.
Yeah. And actually, when you talk about The Last of Us, remake, there's the HBO show. And I don't know, is the HBO show probably 2023?
It's sooner than I thought, so 2022 or 23, yeah, one of those two.
If the game came out, if it was all timed around 2023, that's the 10-year anniversary.
Yeah.
It would fit very well as a marketing narrative.
Yep.
Of the show's coming out on the 10-year anniversary of the game. Here's a remake of the game that has very nice graphics and is easy for watchers of the TV show to get into the game, understand what's going on, and I would say a bit more modernized controls. Like, you can watch how they went through the Uncharted games and how they got better each time.
Yes, for sure.
The controls got better. The gameplay itself just felt better. So
I think
it's not like the original Last of Us is bad in that department, but it has aged.
It feels like a PS3 game, even though it plays well. It's definitely. aged a bit. And I just think that if the HBO series came out and there wasn't some new Last of Us thing to go along with it, people would be like, "What? You're missing out on an opportunity here." So they're trying to make the opportunity here, and it's like they're getting shit on. I don't know. I think it makes sense.
Another quote here that got was emphasizing. This is the editorial part. Is it starts in a paragraph with emphasizing big hits can also be counterproductive because sometimes games start small can turn into massive successes. And to me, that's just an editorializing of being like, sure, it's all risk. Mm-hmm. Like, that's running a company. Like, you put your money towards either some small things that you might think will work out, or you put your money towards big things that have a higher chance of working out. And yes, Sony is less risk averse right now. Like, they'd much rather put their money to things that they know are going to sell.
They're not in a position where they need to take a lot of risks. Like, they have things going pretty well. And they got God of War. Yeah, I mean, God of War coming up, Ratchet coming up, Horizon coming up. I think
another Spider-Man will happen eventually. I'm sure there'll be Miles Morales ends in a way that there will be another PS5 Spider-Man game.
Right, and they're still writing on Miles Morales. It's still in the top, 5 or 10 games. Obviously, there's not a ton on PS5, but I think you can say that someone could say they're like resting on their laurels a little bit. But I think a lot of these franchises are still pretty fresh, and there's a lot of room to grow. And I guess the other problem I have with the thesis, where they only want to, fund blockbusters or whatever, and using Bend as an example, then at the end of about halfway through the article, at the end of one paragraph, it's one sentence and Schreier doesn't dig into this, whereas I would look at that and say, okay, this is the counter argument. You need to give this more room to breathe and see if there's something here to counteract your thesis so that you can at least punch it down if you don't believe in it. But it says, they got their wish, Bend. They got their wish last month and are now working on a new game of their own. So if you're saying Sony is risk averse and doesn't want to have anything except for big blockbusters, then why would they let Bend work on something new when the last new thing they worked on wasn't what Sony really was looking for?
Yeah, I mean, it's true. And it doesn't sound like the entire Bend studio is working on that new thing, which makes sense. They don't need to when they're starting up a new project. But they said what they say. Because in that article, they say that the Bend management was like, we don't want to work on this thing.
Yep.
And Sony was like, okay, you can work on that thing that you want to work on. It's like, clearly they're okay with letting Bend have some leeway. They just didn't want to do Days Gone 2.
Right.
They looked at the numbers and were just like, no, we'd much rather have all the resources of Bend working on other things. Which is a risk in and of itself. So that's where I'm like, all business decisions are risk in some ways. So again, this thing, I'm like, I don't feel like they're focusing only on blockbusters, but they are focusing on the franchises that have been selling very well and are, like you said, in people's minds right now.
Yep. And
they want to reinforce that at the beginning of this console generation. Remind people of why do you have a PS5? Why do you game on a PS5? Oh, here's the games that you would want to play there.
Right.
Remember that? Remember those things from the PS4 that you liked playing? They're here on the PS5 too.
And I think something that people who are into the art that these studios are making don't like to hear is what do you tell shareholders? Yes, we're going to make a follow-up to a game that didn't sell very well and didn't make us as much money as we're hoping or whatever, or you were hoping, versus we're going to make a new version of a game that sold a shit ton that's going to tie into this, media franchise and is going to, probably drive a lot of profits for the company. There is the shareholder audience too. And again, coming back to this is I think a smart business decision. And also I'd love to play Last of Us that's up to the standards of Last of Us 2. I think that would be fantastic.
If they flowed very cleanly gameplay wise right into each other.
I think there's no, I don't think there's,
really good.
Yeah, I don't think there's a planet where they're going to remaster Last of Us and then not also do some work on Last of Us 2 to bring it into, because what we're playing Last of Us 2 on PS5 is the PS4 version.
Yeah.
I think that is part and parcel with this.
It's an update to a PS5 patch or whatever for it. Yeah.
Plus the multiplayer for Last of Us 2, which has not been released yet. So whatever that's called, I forget.
Yeah. Yeah. So I don't know. Like I said, the article, I think the facts are correct. It's just reaching for, honestly, in some ways, a confirmation bias to his thesis. In a lot of ways.
Right.
Like, he's like, this is what I want to say. And I'm like, I don't know if the facts really say that completely.
And it's, I agree with you, and it's odd to me because I love Schreier's work, and I never really feel like that's the case in his writing. And I don't know if that's his, like, I'm writing for Bloomberg, I need to have some punchy thesis here, or what. But this seems to have gone a bit astray compared to his normal writing.
And I guess we can get to the next part, because you sent me the thing. Clearly there was some big dust-up about people pissed off at this article.
Well, yeah. The internet shitting all over Jason Schreier that he's got all his facts wrong, and that just because they Sony in 2019 said they're not going to do a Days Gone 2 doesn't mean they're not doing it now, and he doesn't know. I think partially the Days Gone fan base wanting a sequel.
Sure.
Versus one of the guys who left was like on some podcast who was like, I don't have the ability to be as truthful as Jason Schreier is, but he's definitely tells the truth. It's
not lying. Like,
exactly.
Nothing he's saying is lying. So
exactly. So.
So yeah, I mean that kind of leads into I was dealing with some frustration with streamers over the weekend, because I jumped in, or last week I jumped into a couple streams of No Man's Sky because weirdly they had their update and they were doing Twitch loot drops in No Man's Sky. So if you watch a stream for a few hours, you would get content for No Man's Sky. I was like, sure, I'll have one running. It's generally a person I've gone back and forth and like watched some, not a ton, not a subscriber or anything, but I don't know. And person just went off on a rant about like, he's playing No Man's Sky, he's enjoying No Man's Sky, but really just going off on how they lied to us when it came out.
Oh, good fucking Christ.
But then, like, bringing in CD Projekt Red, CD Projekt, and Cyberpunk, and being like, yeah, us gamers aren't going to take this anymore, and, like, it had, like, hints to me. But the thing is, what bothers me as a dev, I'm like, this has, like, the tinges of the Gamergate bullshit.
Oh, yeah.
Like, I know he's not, but I'm like, dude, this kind of rhetoric matters so much. And, like, I get it that you feel like you got duped in Cyberpunk, like, because you kind of did, but it was definitely this, like, I don't know, it went off into more, like, having to buy, like, games come out now, and they have all this DLC and season passes, and you never can just get a game and just have it, and stuff, and I'm like, it just basically this rant. But the thing is I'm like, okay, if that was just a one-off, sure. But then I heard similar things a couple more times over the past week, and I'm just like, what the fuck is going on? Like, is there this simmering rage coming up again that I have to be worried about? Because it kind of feels that way. And I don't know if I want to deal with that.
Is it we're still locked at home, have nothing else to do, so let's make drama?
Maybe? Yeah, kind of that stuff, and just...
Because I feel like there's a ton of games that are just one and done. Here you go.
Yeah, there are. And they're like, oh, it's all just the indie people making stuff like that. Like, the big companies have lost their way, and they don't know what they're making anymore. And I'm like, sure, there are... In my mind, I'm like, okay, having played games from, let's just go from my teenagers, mid-90s on, Cyberpunk is not the only time that there's been big AAA games that have, like, I will use my favorite word, bamboozled their audience. Like, it happens every once in a while. And it's not right, but I also don't think this is like, oh, all these companies are doing it now and trying to, like, trick their audiences into buying half-complete things. And I would say it's still very much the outlier to the mainstream.
I think it's such a weird thing to get mad about, not because I think I didn't hear his argument, but I would probably align with his argument on CD Projekt Red in terms of what they sold versus what came out.
Okay.
But the easiest way to combat all that is don't pre-order the fucking game and don't buy it on day one. Wait for a week to hear what people say about it. Because if you would have waited a week on CD Projekt Red's game, you'd have been like, this isn't what they promised.
Fuck this.
Right. I will wait until this. You don't have to put your money down. But these people seem to buy into the hype and get sold on it and put their money down early instead of being a little more rational and realizing, oh, I'm being sold a product through all of this neat, flashy advertising. Maybe I should wait and see what it actually looks like. Because if you feel like games are always doing that and they're just fucking over gamers, just wait. Wait a couple days. You will find out quickly, And I feel like then you don't have to worry about having your money on the line.
No, and I agree with you. There's that. Yeah, the rant just kind of went from that to the models that have a bunch of DLC or season passes and stuff like that, and I'm like, well, if that didn't work on a monetary level, studios would not be doing that. But people are okay with that, in general. But I mean, also his argument was, people in chat were having this, were like that exact thing of well, then don't spend your money on season passes and DLCs, and the market will change. And he was very much in this line of yeah, I think us gamers have figured it out now, and you'll see there's going to be a reckoning on the type of games people are going to buy. And I'm like, I'm just is this something that's growing underneath, bubbling up now? And I'm like, I don't think it's going to be true. I think people are just going to continue to buy what they're buying, and market trends aren't radically going to change.
No, and I feel like part of it's also the identity politics of we're mad as hell and we're not going to take it anymore. People who say that, who's the we? You're hoping there's a we. Maybe there is, maybe there isn't.
Based on my data, or his argument, there isn't.
Right. Well,
right now.
And also the DLC, that thing. But there's two sides to it. One, if the story, if you're in for the story and you don't get to complete the story until you finish the DLC, I can kind of get that. You would want to have a complete story, but again, you could wait. There's no reason for you to have to buy it day one. You could wait till the Game of the Year edition or whatever is a reasonable price. But for most stories, I feel like there's a self-contained story in the main game, and then there's additional story in the DLC that you don't really need to have. And for me, I'm actually pretty happy when games that I like do additional content because I want more of that game. The Witcher 3 is probably the best example of it. When I finished the base game, I wanted more, and I was so glad that Blood and Wine came out, or Heart of Stone came out, and then Blood and Wine came out. I didn't have to buy it, but I was very excited to because I wanted to continue that story. So, I don't know. I feel like...
Yeah, it's a weird thing. And I think it's just my bigger thing with, the reaction to Schreier's article, that negative reaction, and that. I'm just I'm really my God, is this just, like you said, people stuck inside for a year and it's really starting to bubble to the surface now? And, but I'm very sensitive to rhetoric like that.
Yeah.
Because, Gamergate was bullshit and not fun for developers at all. And I'm not even targeted in it, but just being in the industry while that's going on, you're just fuck.
Yeah.
I don't like seeing people I'm acquaintances with get harassed online. So.
Yeah.
I don't know.
I don't, obviously I don't either, and I'm not sure if what I'm about to say is true or not, but it seems like when that happened, it felt like a blindsiding. It felt like, wait, what's happening? What is all of this? Versus I feel like maybe the industry is more savvy now about those kind of attacks and maybe is better able to respond. I don't know if that's true or not, but...
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure tons of people are still getting harassed now.
Oh, they are.
I
Absolutely,
don't hear
they are.
people getting swatted recently. So,
No, but there's fucking streamers of color, right, are getting fucking
jeez.
just shit on just because
Yep.
they're streamers of color who like are deigning to like be searching for fucking sponsors, and it's just like, oh, you just want free shit. It's like well, fucking white streamers have done this forever and you didn't have a fucking problem with it. It's
Yeah.
just like there's tons of that toxic shit still happening. So
Yeah. So, I don't know. But, yeah, when you sent me the stuff of like, that there had been this, like, weird flare-up around Schreier's article, which I guess I get that some people might be, like, frustrated by it. Like, you and I look at it and we're like, okay, I don't agree with your thesis completely at all, but I'm not angry about it. I guess that's where I'm at. I don't have loyalty to any of these companies.
right.
I don't care. They're giant corporations. Like, why have loyalty to any of them? And in most ways.
Yeah, I think the problem, I mean, there may be other problems. I think the problem that I see is that we, as two individuals, have multiple facets of our identity. Like
That's
we align with a lot of different interests, and like each interest I have is like maybe 2% of my identity. So if all of a sudden Nintendo, for example, just does shit that I absolutely hate and don't agree with, like my whole identity doesn't go down in flames, like a little part of it does, and I can adjust to that. But if your whole identity is centered around one sector, and then of that sector, like one specific brand or whatever, and it flares up or whatever, that's like your whole identity going down in flames, and that's hard.
Yeah. It feels like an attack directly on you.
100%, absolutely. Like if you identify as a Days Gone enthusiast and like want to root for the underdog and what Ben did and what story they were telling, because it wasn't a female protagonist, because it wasn't focusing on all these other SJW topics, it was just a straight bro story or whatever, and like that doesn't get picked up for a second round, you're like, that is an attack on my identity, so
Yeah.
I don't know. I think that's a lot.
Just weird. You say that, and I'm like, God, I make games for my living, doing this forever. I'm sure my identity is wrapped up in games, like, but it's definitely not wrapped up in companies.
Well, your identity. Okay, I agree with you. I still think that your identity is wrapped up in more than just games, first of all. But also, if you just take games, you make games, you play a ton of different kinds of games. Like you're spread out, even in just games.
Yeah.
I feel like there's
So, yeah.
people who are siloed into one thing.
It's true. They already get focused. They choose that loyalty to a game or to a company, and it just really go deep in there. I mean, it's true. I've dealt with people who are very much the stereotypical like super Sony enthusiast or super Microsoft enthusiast.
I mean, think about League of Legends. Change one part of the mechanic, or once if you're into that, and one little tweak like just throws you, like that person gets belligerently angry, and it's like from the outside you're like, what? Just reduce the drop rate. Or like Outriders right now, they
Oh yeah, I saw our friend chat there, and I'm just like, but I've also seen other things. I was like checking this out, and I'm like, dude, this game's only been out for like a couple weeks. Like, I'd have a hard time getting that upset about anything that they do.
Right, but if you are, I don't know. It just depends on how deep you are into something.
Yeah.
I mean, I was pretty pissed off about the end of Game of Thrones. I'll tell you that on the TV HBO series. I mean,
yeah, I don't know if I was. Media Light doesn't get me pissed. I mean, I was not happy with it. I was like, wow, this sucks.
Dude, I was at Comic-Con. D&D were going to be there, and I was like, all right, I'm going to ask a question. I'm going to be that guy. And I was like, no, I'm probably not going to be that guy. I'm going to calm it down a little bit. But I was like on the cusp, because I was really mad at what they did to that. And then they didn't show up, and I was like, those fucking cowards. And I was just like really like pumped up about it. I was like, okay, I need to take a step back. I'm a little wrapped up in this.
It's true. Wow, I hadn't thought about Game of Thrones in a while.
Well, you sent that tweet today.
And I'm happy I'm not. Let's move to something else. I don't want to think about that.
Let's talk about what we've been playing. I'm going to start. I took Brad gave me a TV a long time ago. It's been in the garage, and I was going to make a little like gaming little side nook in the garage for some of my old consoles, and I finally put the Wii U out there. And my daughter and I went out to the garage to clean something up. I was like, oh, she's like, oh, what's that? I was like, oh, I put the Wii U out here. She's like, oh, can we play something? And I went through the folder and she saw Yoshi's Crafted World. And she's like, let's play that. Because we had played, Yoshi's Woolly World. Because we had played Crafted World on Switch like 2 or 3 times. And love that game. It's great. It's like super inventive, super cute. Put in Woolly World. Holy shit. Woolly World is amazing. Crafted World sucks. Like, Woolly World is just that good. I didn't realize how iterative of Woolly World Crafted World is. It's just like there's like more charm, like more interesting secrets, lots more things to find in really interesting nooks and crannies of the level. The level design seems more complex and varied and different. And I was just like, what happened between this version and Crafted World? They're both good games, but man, this one is like superlative. And I've only played like 2 worlds. And my daughter was kind of feeling the same way. She's like, this is really cool. So we had set up the Wii U out there and had the Pro Controller plugged in because the battery was dead. So she sits in her car seat, turns to the side, and just playing in her car seat in the car. And I was like, this is a weird dad moment. But that's the only new game I played this week. I've got the Burning Crusade beta that I'm going to load up and play. That's the only WoW I've ever played, so I want to check it out. The vanilla, whatever, beta of it. And then the rest of the week I spent this very interesting game where I'd go onto YouTube and find Diablo 2 Resurrected alpha gameplay and just watch it. And that's what I've done this week.
I understand that. I did a fair amount of watching of Diablo 2 Resurrected Twitch streams while they were doing that live. And yeah, that looks really good. Like, really fucking good.
Oh my god. It's so good.
It's updated in the right ways. And just the simple things of like, hey, look, you just walk over gold to pick it up. You don't actually have to click all the goddamn gold. Things on the ground. Doesn't change gameplay. It's fine. Like,
right. Yes, I don't need to click it all. Thank you.
Yeah. Multiple stash tabs. Thank God.
Right.
Just little things that I'm just like, oh, so much nicer. The UI is generally just kind of a bit nicer and cleaner in that game. Yeah, I don't know. I was very happy watching those.
And jealous. Let's put that.
Yeah, jealous. I don't have it. But happy to watch it. And just to kind of see other people playing it and who are just like, yeah, this is legit good. Like, this is very much still Diablo 2 through and through. Everything I remember about Diablo 2 is actually how this is functioning. It just looks pretty. And has some small quality of life changes. So, very, very excited for that to eventually show up. For the most of the week, I've just been playing Monster Hunter. I'm 80 hours in. I think I just hit 80 hours today. I'm in Hunter rank 7. I'm in the last chunk of monsters before the end boss. The current end boss, I say in quotes, because they've already said summer has the real ending.
It's like not even in the game yet, basically.
Nope. They're just like, you will beat this, and the real ending will actually be probably, I would assume, probably June. Late June. There's going to be a late April update, and I bet it will be a few months. So late June, early July will be the next major update that has the real ending and other monsters and who knows what else. But they definitely focused, when we talk about games that have come out and them being like, through all this COVID time, they focused on the like, fine, we're just going to cut some content so we can make everything else much more polished. And you know what? We'll just promise to release it later. And it works. Because I'm 80 hours in and I'm still loving the game. And it's polished through and through. I still can't believe I'm playing it on a Switch. Because there are just times you're just like, wow, this is good for a Switch. How is this running at 30 frames per second without issue?
Right.
Which is a huge benefit to the RE engine and what that thing's going to be capable of for Capcom in the future. And running games on the Switch, and if the Switch Pro comes out, the whole thing. Like, holy cow. They have a very, very nice engine. They can scale very well, clearly. But yeah, no, I'm loving, I'm deep into the late game Monster Hunter hunting out specific monsters to get specific parts because I'm building a specific set that I want, the right skills, and I'm having a ton of fun with this one. The movement is incredible. Like, I feel like I have pretty good mastery over wire bugs now, and I never want to go play a Monster Hunter game that doesn't have them anymore.
Right.
Because the mobility is just a ton of fun. And weirdly, they took out a lot of the stuff that was like, hey, and all that preparation work that you had to do, like getting into a mission, like World, you got in a mission, you had to go like track where the monster was. Rise just shows you where the monster is.
That's good, because that drove me nuts.
Just fight. It's emphasis on like, get to the fight, get in the fight. Have like, they clearly like that's what people want to do. And what they've emphasized is instead of, okay, you need to track down where the monster is, a lot of the buffs you get are actually just things in the map. So you're like, okay, the monster, I see on the map where the monster is that I want to hunt. Okay, I'm planning my path to get there, so I'm collecting all these buffs on my way there. So it's not usually a straight line. You kind of weave your way through the map and kind of figure out, using wirebug and stuff to figure out how powerful do I want to be when I get there?
Right.
How buff do I want to be when I get there? Which is more fun than just going, well, where's the monster at? So that's that. I think that experience has actually been a big positive for me overall. I think there's some division in the community with people that are like, oh, this makes it too easy to just get there and get that stuff done. I'm like, but that's the point. The monster fights are the point of this game. Let's do it.
I mean, that is the title, right?
Yeah. So, and that's also led me to realize that, like, a lot of third-person action games and open-world games have just really now... I've kind of had it in the back of my head, but I will state this now that movement and mobility and the enjoyment of movement in like third-person games is really important.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Like incredibly so. Like I always say, like Breath of the Wild, like one of its best things about it is just traversing the environment is really entertaining and feels really good all the time. And this Monster Hunter feels the same way. They just added things to make traversal way more entertaining, faster and more interesting ways to traverse the environment. And then I just started thinking of other third-person action games, and I'm like, yeah, all the really good ones just have really good traversal all the time. They just feel great. And the ones that suck have really, not suck, but the ones that kind of fall flat are just like, yeah, this is pretty standard traversal, whatever. The active movement isn't special. So that's my thesis on open world games now, where I'm like, okay, should focus on that a bit more.
I felt like that after playing Syndicate, where you get this grappling hook and you just kind of just shoot yourself up to the top of anything. And it's just like, all right, I need this traversal mechanic for every Assassin's Creed game moving forward, or every open world game moving forward. Yeah. It's just like, there's a point, boom, go. And it's just like the Batman grappling hook almost. They didn't do that. Now I'm climbing again, but man, that was like the pinnacle of movement in a Assassin's Creed game for me. So I get that. You want to see that thing moving forward.
I guess the Spider-Man games, same way.
Yeah.
Like,
oh yeah.
Those games feels amazing. It's not specific, and that's the thing. Like combat's fun and all, but amount of time you spend just web slinging through the city in those games is huge. So it's made to be a really compelling gameplay experience to move through the world in the environment. So I don't know. It all leads back to that. I think Monster Hunter Rise has made the best movement in a Monster Hunter ever, and it makes playing the game so much smoother and so much more enjoyable.
Is it something where you couldn't even go back to World and really enjoy it?
I don't think so.
Wow.
I think World's going to feel slow in a lot of ways. And I think I could enjoy World. Like people at my work are playing both, kind of bouncing between them, and there's stuff in World that they enjoy, but I I think we talked about it, they all agree that it's just slower.
Yeah.
And then go back to any of the ones before World, and they're even slower than that. So that's just what Rise has done. Like, they've just taken stuff and they're going faster, going vertical. No fall damage on anything, so just go as high as you want, jump off anything, figure it out. Like, yeah, ton of fun. I absolutely love it. I think it's sold like 6 million copies now, the last time they said, like, last weekend.
Right.
So I wouldn't be surprised if it sold another 7 million, another 1 million to 7 this week. Supposedly it's been like sold out physically in Japan this entire time.
That
like,
and the Switch, I heard. Both.
Yeah, which doesn't surprise me.
Yeah.
Monster Hunter is huge in Japan, but is also now huge in the rest of the world. So, that's, for the most part, what I've been playing. Beyond the Night, we played Astroneer some.
Oh, shit. Totally forgot to even mention that. I had a lot of fun playing Astroneer with you, and I thought afterwards, I'm like, I want to play that again. Now that I get it, like, I really like the chill exploration, no combat, but some weird shit happens. Like,
yes, some weird shit does happen.
Like, go find this purple dot on the edge of your compass and kind of unlock this, basically a fast travel point, and then you can then burrow to the center of the world.
Yeah. So the thing is, before that last patch that came out, a couple weeks ago, the compass wasn't anything like, the compass just would pop up and would give you direction, but it had no waypoints on it.
Mm-hmm.
So the only way to find that structure in the world was at night. You could kind of see a light beam go up to the sky, or you run across it while running around. So a lot of people never even engaged with that content.
Right. And now they will.
Put stuff that have a compass that can actually like point people to like end missions that say, "Hey, go check these things out." Like, wow. Directed gameplay, it helps. So
yeah, it does when in a game like that where it's like kind of like build your own fun, make your own fun. It's like that goes so far for some people, and it's like, okay, what can I do? And then now that I've been with you and I see what I can do, I'm more interested in going back and doing some of those things on my own.
Yeah, so it was a good experience. I needed the chill time. I had gotten, I think that was Friday, and I had earlier in the day had a pretty frustrating time with Monster Hunter. I was just in a bad mood, and then I just had a really bad hunt where I completely failed. And I was like, I just need to make sure I don't play this tonight. I need to knock off. Like, I am not in a good mood. This did not put me in a better mood. Let's just do something chill. And Astroneer is very much that. It's very chill.
You shouldn't stay with people that hurt you. That's all I'm going to say.
I haven't had a bad night with Monster Hunter since. It was just Friday. They were sorry. No.
I was going to say, God damn it, the same thing I was going to say.
Yeah, pretty much.
He said he wouldn't do it again. Jesus. Well, let's end on that note, I guess.
Yeah, I got a little dark there. Oh well.
Yeah. Anything in the next week on the horizon? We're getting toward, we even talk about E3. I guess E3's coming back. But maybe we're starting to get into a few, I don't know, nuggets of things to look forward to in the summer in terms of game announcements and things. So maybe God, I keep bumping the table. Sorry, folks.
There's, trying to think of other things. There's been some stuff this week, like industry news-wise, of that lawsuit going on with Epic and Apple.
Oh, yeah.
And there's getting some money, like specific details about money coming out from that. So
maybe that's why my Apple stock has shot up so much in the last 4 days.
Epic is spending a lot of money on exclusives.
Yeah.
A lot.
Well, and they're losing money, right? They're losing money on.
They're losing a lot of money.
Epic Game Store, which, like $200 million a year.
Epic Game Store is also, making a lot more than I thought it was making. Mm-hmm. So, but they're spending that Fortnite money. Let's just put it that way.
Yeah, so that's why it doesn't look like a loss. Like, sure, they've $200 million to get someone in the door, but I've actually purchased several games on Epic Game Store now because I was in there and they had the coupons and whatever else,
Yep.
I wouldn't have done it otherwise.
I mean, it's definitely, if you have the money to do it, it's definitely a way you can bully yourself into the monopoly that is Steam.
Right.
There.
Yep.
Which is true. Steam is very much a monopoly in that space. So
I wonder what their market share is, Epic, compared to like GOG.
I'm pretty sure they've cannibalized a lot of GOG.
Yeah.
I'm trying to think. Digital game store market share. I'm trying to think what it was before. I still think Valve was probably like 90% of it. Maybe they're down to like 85. I don't know.
Still, more money than you can ever
that's
spend
like
in your life.
Is like Epic Game Store at this point.
Yeah.
But we'll see. I think there's going to be some more data coming out over the next few weeks on that, which is kind of fascinating because you're getting to see all these companies air their very private information very publicly.
Mm-hmm.
But that's how it goes. So yeah, I don't know. I don't know what else is going to happen this week. It seems kind of quiet.
It does, yes.
And I think it's going to be that way for a little bit. There's no Nintendo Directs coming as far as have been announced. There's no Sony or Microsoft things happening. I would think something out of Microsoft, honestly.
I think so too.
But Bethesda now, like, say something.
Yep. No, I think so. I think there's got to be something there because I feel like just in terms of like keeping the name in the news cycle, like are we going to have, we just obviously the Bethesda thing, but are we going to have like Microsoft buys Discord in the next couple weeks?
Oh, that's true. That is possible.
That's the big thing, which would do great for my Microsoft stock. So let's bring it on. Everything's through the stock market frame now.
You just have diversity of where all your stocks are. You're like, if one of you does well, I do well.
Exactly. I have a few like individual stocks. Most of mine are just index stocks, but I have a few, the things that I use and I think are going to be around for a very long time. Apple, Microsoft, Target.
Yeah.
So
that's true.
Yeah.
Microsoft's not going anywhere.
No. All right, folks. Well, thanks for listening to Prof and Dev Play Games, episode 287, I think is what I said. 287. If you like our podcast, please rate us on your podcast service of choice. Tell a friend or three, and we'll be back next week talking about something very cool. And I'll probably be talking about the Burning Crusade thing because I'll probably play it by then.
Yeah.
I've got to download it, so that's one step forward. All right, folks. See ya.
Later.